guys, how are you? Come back to this project, come back to paint the crystal brass miniature. This video tutorial I want to show you how I paint the face and the skin. I thought that could be really interesting to you because I want to focus all the attention to paint the face. I know on another video tutorials I told you that the most important stuff on a miniature is the face, right? So why not? I have to focus at least one video tutorial to show you all the tricks, and I think this one could be a really nice example, right? It's my model to crystal brass. So there is only one. I don't have excuses to bring my best level here. So for that reason I want to keep the attention to paint the face. Some tips I can give you when you are painting the skin. The most important, remember, if you remember something about another video tutorials, I told you something like cap or ceilings, right? That means that you have to create the highest light or the top of the light that you have to use. This is your ceiling and you can't cross that ceiling. Why? Because if you cross that part at the end, maybe it could look like another or different material. For example, the non-metallic metal. I know this is the fancy way to paint, you love them, I know that part. But you have to understand that not everything have exactly the same contrast. So for that reason, I recommend you create a cap. So then, if you want to represent something satin, like in that case, or like for example silk, when you are painting clothes, it's really interesting, create this ceiling and don't cross it. Because you have to represent something satin with a lot of contrast, and remember, you have to focus the highest attention or the highest light on the face. For that reason, I explain you that you have to start to paint everything like a sketch, everything together, and then focus more and more attention on the face. One tip I can give you: if you start with the face at the end, maybe you are fresh, you feel that you are comfortable, you feel that you can create everything perfectly, and you start to paint, and maybe the face is awesome, but then you will start to paint the skin, the rest of the skin, the body, legs, arms, everything, and maybe you feel that you have better control with dilution or better control with the color, or you look for something different because you test at the beginning the color and looks nice, but now after painting the skin, looks like maybe if you add a different tone or create something with more light, it's more interesting, and you're right because you feel comfortable painting now after the first minutes painting the skin. So maybe at the end you will have better result or something with more light on the skin than on the face. For example, to give you an example, an easy and funny example. For example, if you are painting at the end the feet and you are painting awesome feet, you paint with the highest light, but you are painting the feet. You are trying to say to the viewers, hey, you have to see here because it's awesome. That part is the best part of my miniature. And this is wrong. So because you never have to paint the highest light on the bottom of the miniature. Always, if I'm telling you something without an OSL, okay, if your idea is create an OSL and you have to create fire or something like that on the bottom of the model, for sure you have to create the highest light. But in a normal light, like this model, you have to think that you need to focus the attention where? On the top of the model. For example, the chest and the face. It's really important. Think about that, because then if you think about that, you can create the sketch at the beginning on the face if you want, because you want to start there. Perfect. You can start there and then paint the skin, but you never will think that everything is done. So you have to continue creating something else. You have to fix some little mistakes or fix something that you don't like it too much. So you want to create something really interesting to you, because as always I said, this is to you to enjoy painting. So if you don't like it, try to find a different way to get the result you like it. And if you don't have enough skills to get this result, don't be stressed about that. Just paint models and try to finish them, because then you will have enough feedbacks to see how you are improving. Because if you don't have this feedback, at the end, you will be worried about a lot of stuffs that maybe you don't have to be worried about them because you are improving, and maybe you are improving faster than you can imagine. So please, my first tip, remember, paint the skin and the face at the same time. Try to create a sketch. As you see on the video tutorial, I started with the skin on the body or the legs, and then I moved to the face, but I didn't paint perfectly the face. I just create a sketch, and now because I have enough painting on the skin, it's the moment to focus the attention there. And if you see, when you are painting a female face or an elf face or a kid or child face, this is super important. Try to don't paint with a lot of wrinkles, because could look completely different, could look older, could look angry, could look different, and maybe the result you don't like it. So the idea is try to get like a smooth surface but with enough contrast. I know this is really weird, but the trick is think like a makeup on a girl. You have to create like a fake makeup on this model, because for sure it's an elf and maybe elves don't have makeup. But you have to create something like that. So the idea, try to create a smooth surface but always thinking that you have to create this contrast, where if you see this video tutorial, you will find what places you have to reinforce a bit else to get these highest lights, okay? For example, the cheekbones, it's an interesting part. The chin, it's really interesting too. The eyes, super important. Move the light close to the eyes. Why? Because eyes and lips are the two most important parts on a face. Because the forehead, nobody cares the forehead. And for example, the nose, this is up to you. Sometimes if you see, for example, Japanese anime or Japanese cartoons, you will see that they remove perfectly the nose. It's just one shadow to define it. So the truth, nobody cares about that. You can create with a smooth nose, with less nose, or with a big nose like mine. So don't worry about that. Just focus attention on the eyes, the most important, because it's where you try to send information to the viewers. It's like, okay, I like it, I like the view. So when you create an interesting eyes, it's perfect. If the eyes are a bit weird, at the end everybody will say, hey, you didn't paint well the eyes. And the lips, exactly the same. You have to create an interesting lips, okay, to kiss. So then, after this, the idea will be create exactly a high contrast, as I explained you, but with more layers, many layers. Don't feel that you have to, or don't think that you have to create 5 layers, because maybe with 5 layers, it's okay in a small area. But for example, now on the leg or on the belly or areas like that, a bit bigger, maybe you have to create exactly the same contrast as you painted with 5 layers, but in that case maybe you will need 8. Why? Because the area is bigger. So if you paint just with 5 layers, at the end you will see perfectly every cut, and this is really hard to blend at the end, and more if you are painting a female or like an elf in that case, because you should paint with a really smooth surface, okay? I don't want to invite you to paint glazes because I don't use them, but for this kind of skins I recommend you follow the instructions or the tricks I explained you in another video tutorials about how to create like a fake glazes. It's like make a dilution between 50-50, 50 paint, 50 water, and just start in the dark area and move to the place where you painted the last layer, okay, exactly with the same color. So you will stop in an area where you have exactly the same color. So in the middle you will create this gradient, okay? It's not perfect like a glaze, but will be perfect to create a glaze sketch to blend at the end with the airbrush, okay? Easier, I think better and faster. If you see now the video tutorial, you will see that the face have a lot of light on the face, but it looks like smooth. So this is the idea. You have to create a smooth surface, small volumes or flat volumes. If you create a deep shadows, at the end could be really weird, because remember, it's a tiny miniature. You are painting, in that case, a 54 millimeters. It's tiny. So if you're painting something like that, try to don't create a lot of wrinkles, because at the end could look older or something different that you want to represent. Sometimes it's not your skill to paint, it's that you didn't think enough about what do you want to represent. In that case, if you want to represent an elf, you should create something like young, so something like could be really old but looks like young. So this is the idea. It's not because it's only a female. You can create a male elf exactly with the same tricks, okay? With a flat volume but with a high contrast, where I explain you in some parts of the video tutorial when we painted the face. And if you see, sometimes I'm painting just with the point of my brush to get more definition or just drop less paint on the area. So in some moments when I want to aim better or thinner, I'm going to use just the point of my brush to try to create just tiny points or tiny lines to create this gradient or light, as you see now on the video. And as you can see, all the time I repainted the same places. It's not because I want to change everything, it's just because I need to create this gradient. And the idea will be start with a base coat and going up all the time with maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 layers. For example, another trick I'm going to give you. If you don't know what means midtones, this is typical, right? You need more midtones on your model. What means that? What means midtones if I painted with enough midtones? Maybe they try to explain you that you have to create different layers with different lights and shadows in different places. You don't have to create all the midtones just in one area and the rest of them exactly with the same midtones. Sometimes if you paint with 5 layers everything, you will have a perfect contrast, a high contrast, everything will look perfect, but maybe will look artificial because everything will have exactly the same definition, exactly the same light. Everything have the same light? No. So the idea is try to cheat this idea, okay? It's like everything in a model is like cheating, okay? You have to create fake lights or fake contrast sometimes because it's tiny. So you have to fix that idea with enough light or maybe with less. So I want to propose you that if you want to paint with 5 layers, because you understand that you have to paint everything with layers. So if I paint it with 5 layers, I know that it's okay. If you need to think about that, the idea that I want to propose you will be paint with 5 layers, okay? And then some areas where you don't need too much information, for example, feet or some places that where you don't want to represent with a lot of information, paint with 4 layers, not 5, 1 less, okay? And then the places where you want to represent with more interest, like the face or chest or the top of the model, try to paint with 6 or 7 layers. Just with that, you will create a midtones around all the model, because in some areas you will have a lot of contrast because you have painted with 4 layers, enough to create a lot of contrast. But then you will have another, or close to the place that you painted with 4 layers, you will have another area with 5 layers. So now you can see that you have different lights. Looks interesting because you don't have exactly the same finish. You have different finish with 4 layers and 5 layers, just that. But then when you paint the next places with 6 or 7 layers, you will have something completely new. And at the end you will have places where you have 3 and 4 spots completely different. So this is a trick to create different midtones. Okay, and now we finished the skin, at least now. The idea will be paint leather. I want to show you how I painted the leather here, because some of you asking me a lot of questions about, hey, how you paint the leather. You need to think about what kind of leather do you want to represent, because I usually want to represent something like this, a bit older from the war. She was in a battle, so I don't want to create a clean or perfect and smooth leather. So this one looks more like older, with scratch and a texture, but I like it. So then, after thinking how old or new do you want to represent the leather, you have to think about what kind of colors I would like to represent on this leather. That means if you want to represent something more close to black or close to brown. And if you want something more like brown, remember that you have a lot of kinds of browns. There isn't only one way to paint the leather. You have a lot of places or a lot of ways to paint the leather. For example, if you paint with green, with a bit of green inside of the brown, could look nice. If you paint with a bit of orange, could be nice too. If you paint with a bit of blue, will be a bit gray, and the result will be awesome too. So the idea will be just move these kind of browns. I want to explain you that if you need to paint a lot of browns, a lot of the leathers, don't paint exactly the same. Don't paint with the same color everything. Try to create something different, to create an harmony. And some mistakes create more harmony than everything perfect. Because if you paint all the leathers exactly with the same brown and the same lights and everything looks the same, at the end the result looks like a factory made it. And maybe in this universe, in the World of Warcraft universe, it's not the idea, right? So for that, I want to propose you want to start with just one brown because you don't know what kind of browns you need to use. Perfect. Start with one, just that. And then the next layers, try to use the colors that you know. Paint the next layers, paint the next lights, and then for the next round, try to change a bit the color. For example, you can use the same colors to get the light, but then in some of the lights in the middle or the top, try to add a different tones, like orange or green or red or blue, something else, or yellow, the color that you want. But the idea is just move a bit, and with this you will get something different, because you will have in the same leather, in the same material, different finish, and at the end will look again like a mid-tones. You will create a lot of mid-tones, a lot of nuances around all your model, because again I have to say everything is the same. You have to work on everything together, not only one stuff, because maybe you have painted the best leather ever, but only one, and then the rest of the leather, why? How will you paint them? With the same technique, with the same colors? At the end will look weird, because looks like you painted everything at the same time and you didn't want to change the color because you need to paint faster. Just that. If you change the color, will be the same exercise, the same time painting, but at the end the result will be like double work. Another trick. And for example, about the leather, I like to paint with stippling, like you see on the video, because it's the way to create something more abstract. You have to represent something completely abstract. If everything looks, for example, you are painting with scratches, and you start all the scratches at the left and going to the right all the time, left to right, everything the same. At the end will look boring, because people will see the trick. Okay, it's like magic trick. You have to keep the secret by yourself. So for that, it's exactly the same. You have to create something abstract, something like a canvas, abstract canvas. So you will see something with texture, with this stippling, but you don't know what is that. So this is the idea. You can't see perfectly how you painted, because at the end we look like leather. This is our idea. So it's more interesting if you create something random than something like made it by handmade. And as you see, easy. It's just paint with layers, paint with stippling, paint with scratches, just with the point of the brush, trying to have more control, more precise, and aim where you want to create this, and just test. And if something you don't like it, with the next layer, lighter, change it for new information. Just that, nothing else. Remember that always I explain you that you have to create edge highlights, and sometimes you will have to represent the edge highlights like fake edge highlights. It's more like light lining. You have to create these lights because sometimes you have to define everything. You have to create the details, everything with a thin outlinings. You don't have how to create the outlinings. You have to create this light lining like a edge highlight to define every stuff. And more when it's a detail, a tiny detail. And this is the trick, it's just the stippling, just that. And trying to move the light where you want, just that, as always I explain you. For example, the scratches, sometimes I paint the scratches just with thin dots, like creating like a straight line, but with thin dots, like beep, 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 beep. And for sure, you have to make noise when you are painting the texture. If you don't make noise, at the end, never will work. You need to make something like ni 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 ni, ti 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 ti. It's the best way. I know, now you're in your home making noise in silence to yourself, like tick, 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 tick. And another trick I have to tell you when you are painting the texture. At the beginning, I recommend you start with the number 2, for example, the brush, and paint with a thick dot, thick stippling. And then the idea when you paint 1, 2, 3 layers and you need to paint the next layers, the idea will be use a different brush, number 1 in that case, and perfect with a perfect point, okay? And try to paint again just different texture, and with less layers try to paint thinner. Be careful with that, okay? Try to paint thinner. So at the end you will have results about the texture, something at the beginning thicker, in the middle like mid between thick and thin, and at the end will be super thin. So this is the trick to create mid-tones with the texture too, okay? Nuances on the texture. And basically this was the video tutorial, this was everything. So again, thank you very much to be on the other side watching these video tutorials and enjoying painting on that way. And for sure, I hope see you in the next streamings and the next video tutorials, because this is just the beginning. So again, thank you very much to enjoying watching this, and I hope see you soon in the next video tutorial. Ciao, ciao!